Do you also think the reason why the startup culture is also growing in India is the fact that a lot of people are seeing the gap what's in the economy of India? Because the way that I see is like I've seen like a lot of businesses that have grown in Western culture, let's say in US and Canada, right? The
Mhm.
companies that are doing good, the ideas that are doing good in the West, people are trying to bring them in India. I think that is also a great opportunity for Indian consumers to tap into that market.
I do think that's true. Largely, the macroeconomic argument is also to say that, hey, we all talk about, India being such a large country by size and by population, yet from an economical lens, we're not where we should be, right? You could make the argument that China was in a similar circumstance, but it took them 30, 40 years to become a global superpower. So, where will Indian innovation come from? Will it come from the larger companies, or will it come from the smaller companies? The answer is it will come from these smaller, disruptive companies led by these individuals who are hustling and targeting challenging problems and solving them by themselves, right? Because if grassroots innovation does not happen from these larger companies are built for process systems, they will run very well, they will drive the economy on a larger basis. But the innovation, the disruption, the newer trends will be captured by these smaller companies. If you look at the US itself, right, the top five companies in the US were at some point new age companies, right? If you look at an Amazon 97, Apple, which is like around 1970, 80, Microsoft, similarly, that time, whatnot, right? Facebook, all of these companies were at some point, smaller startups which were venture backed. So I think India is also moving in that direction. In India, we have an example in Zomato now. Zomato is valued at $20 billion. They're significantly large. They're doing incredibly well. It's taken them 15 years, but they're now in a lot of spectrums. In fact, this week there was chatter of them going into another different. So they're primarily, for context, they're a food delivery business, but they also have a grocery application in the form of Blinkit, which means they have commerce from a food lens and a grocery lens, and they're now going into events and ticketing as well,
Oh,
and they can do a lot more. And they're also stakeholders in a company called Shiprocket, which does logistics. So that's an ecosystem in itself, right? So we'll see a lot more companies like that. Flipkart is a good example. Flipkart does so much in India beyond e-commerce, similarly like what Amazon does in the US, right? We're having a lot of these companies come up, and I do think a lot of these trends. I think US gives us the way because they've been ahead from a consumer lens, from a company lens, from an economical lens, which means there are patterns which are set, which will be replicated. But you'd be surprised by the number of very interesting India first problems that are being tackled in the country as well, because you can only replicate solutions till a point, and more than that, you can replicate more consumer trends that, okay, people will be healthy at some point, people will spend on discretionary items at some point, right? So you can build solutions for that, but there are a lot of Indian first solutions as well. So I think, in conclusion, a lot of this innovation will come from startups, and that is where I personally am very bullish on the ecosystem. The next 10 years will perhaps define India's sort of, economy trajectory for the next 50. And it's a privilege to be in the Indian startup tech ecosystem right now, because you get to see it live, as opposed to, missing the bus and seeing that, okay, all of the action was happening earlier, right? So I think that way it's very, very interesting.